Hello and welcome to another video from Haste Computer Repair. Today we're taking a look at the llano V12 Ultra Laptop Cooler. Just a quick note, I kind of like the plain packaging here. It's nice and simple and takes attention away from those porch pirates. Anyway, let's open this up and take a look. First up in this bag, we have a user manual, what appears to be a dust filter, and a USB-A to USB-C cable. And here's the 12-volt power adapter. And actually, before we start the review, I just want to point out that the main difference between this laptop cooler and the last one that I reviewed earlier this year is that this includes a software suite where you can control fan speeds, and I believe it automatically adjusts using their own version of AI software to ramp up or ramp down fans according to what kind of temperature your laptop is outputting. So that sounds kind of fun and interesting. First, we'll have an initial look at the cooler itself, and then I'll show you what laptop I'm using, and then we'll go and download the software and test it out. So the V12 Ultra looks just like the last llano laptop cooler that I reviewed. So we're going to skip towards trying out the software. And before that, let's take a look at the laptop I'm using for this test. This should be a good test subject for this laptop cooler. It's an MSI Katana 17 V12 VGK with an Intel Core i7-12650H CPU and an RTX 4070. So now on to downloading the software. Pull up your web browser and go to llanolife.com. and navigate over to the support button right here and hover your mouse icon over support and go to download. And here is the V12 Ultra Laptop Cooler software with the download link right here, that little arrow. Alright, so as you can see, when I press on the download link, nothing happens. I do not get a download. So to rectify this, let's right click, save link as, and put the file wherever you want. I'm going to put it in the downloads folder. Looks like Windows is detecting it as an insecure download. We'll just press keep, and there we go. We'll wait for that to download and we'll be right back. Now that the download is complete, let's right click the zipped file, extract all, extract, and we can double click on setup, say yes. English is the language I'll be speaking. So we have a custom install and a quick install. Let's see what's in custom. Okay, so we have the option of create shortcut and start automatically on boot. I'm the kind of guy who likes to pick when my software is up and running, so I'm going to uncheck that. However, if you're going to be using this all the time, I'd say keep it checked and it'll start up every time you start up Windows, and install now. Okay, that did not take very long. We'll hit yes. And we have the license agreement to scroll through before we can click accept. Alright, so this is actually pretty cool. Here in the hardware information tab, we have information on the CPU, GPU, motherboard, SSD, the display panel, and the RAM. And it's actually quite detailed, so that's actually a really nice feature. I kind of like that. And over here on the right, it looks like we have a sensor which is recording the current CPU frequency, voltage, usage, thermal power, and the GPU frequency and the memory frequency, as well as the GPU TDP and the overall memory usage. Again, that's pretty detailed and I wasn't actually expecting all of that. So that is definitely a nice to have. And here we have the current temperature of the CPU at 49 degrees, 47 degrees Celsius, and the GPU is sitting steady at 48 degrees Celsius. And we even have the SSD temperature, which is 27 degrees Celsius, and the RAM, which is pretty cool. Now we know it's sitting at 42 degrees. So all this, and we haven't even connected it to the cooler yet. Let's go ahead and do that. Just for context, the USB-C end goes into the laptop cooler and the USB-A into the laptop. Okay, so now that we have the laptop connected, let's try clicking on device management. You can see here there's V12 Ultra, download now. Let's try that. There we go, there's a new interface for us to look at. So over here in RPM mode, you can see we have AI low, AI medium, and AI high. We're currently in manual mode. I think I'll pick AI medium just to start. So that ramped up the fan speeds to 825 RPM just on idle. You can probably hear it. And over here in RGB lighting control, you can toggle it on and off. We can control the RGB on the laptop cooler itself, which is actually a pretty neat feature. I kind of like the pulsing effect. And over here in hardware status, we have our CPU and GPU information, the utilization and the temperatures, as well as the frequency, thermal power. Again, that's very detailed and very useful if you're one who likes to monitor your performance. We also have the amount of VRAM down here and also DRAM. So you can always keep track of what's going on in the system. Back to the camera right now, we have the RPM mode set to AI medium. And the first test I'm going to do is run MSI Combustor for 10 minutes straight. Let's go ahead and load that up. So we'll run this for a while with the laptop cooler and we'll be able to measure our temps with minimum and max using hardware monitor. Oh, that's a little bit bright on the screen. I apologize for that. So we have hardware monitor loaded up and we're going to record the minimum and max after 10 minutes. After that, we'll take the laptop off the laptop cooler and we'll measure the difference. And here we go in MSI Combustor and 1080p windowed GPU stress test. With the CPU, we had a hotspot of 92 degrees without the cooler and 72 degrees with the cooler, with a pretty astounding 20-degree difference. Likewise for the GPU, we're looking at a 16-degree difference with a hotspot of 81 with no cooler and 65 with the cooler. For general temperatures, we're looking at a 5-degree difference with the CPU and a 14-degree difference with the GPU. Since we're mainly looking at the GPU in this case, that's a pretty great difference. However, that 20-degree difference with the CPU hotspot is kind of incredible. And here we have The Last of Us played for 10 minutes with high presets, 1080p, full screen, and we saw a hotspot of 98 degrees with no cooler and 90 degrees with the cooler, so we're looking at an 8-degree difference. Likewise with the GPU, we had an 82-degree hotspot and a 63-degree general temperature at a difference of 19 degrees. That's really great. With the GPU, we had a hotspot of 82 without the cooler and 63 with the cooler. We're looking at a 19-degree difference there. And for general temps, we had a 31-degree difference for the CPU and a 31-degree difference with the GPU. Running Fortnite at 1080p medium settings full screen DX12. And yes, I am a 40-year-old man in 2025 playing Fortnite, but hey, you know what? It turns out the game's kind of fun, and everybody asks about Fortnite when they're buying my custom PCs, so I gotta give them what they want. We reach a hotspot of 100 degrees with no cooler and 98 degrees with, so we're looking at a 2-degree difference. Likewise with the GPU, the hotspot was 84 without the cooler and 66 with the cooler, so we're looking at a much bigger 18-degree difference. General temperatures for the GPU, we have an 18-degree difference, and with the CPU, 10-degree difference. Pretty good. And over here with Handbrake 1.9.0 with 11 minutes of 1080p gaming footage with the preset H.264 and Creator 1080p 60. We can see that our hotspot sat at 98 with both cooler and no cooler, but we do have a 15-degree difference between the two when generally looking at the temperatures. Likewise with the GPU, we have a 7-degree difference with the hotspot and a 9-degree difference with general temperatures. And over here with DaVinci Resolve 20.1, we're running 11 minutes of raw 1080p footage at H.264, and we can see that the difference is 18 degrees. And we had a pretty high hotspot with both the cooler and no cooler, so we have no difference there. General temps, we see an 18-degree difference with the CPU. Likewise, a 13-degree difference with the GPU and a 7-degree difference on the hotspot of the GPU with the cooler and without the cooler. Alright, so our first round of testing has come to an end. Let's get this laptop off the cooler. And since we're done using the cooler for now, we can actually use a software to turn it off. So now that we're done doing the thermal tests, which I might add turned out really well and to my liking, let's check out some of the features that are left over from the original version. If for some reason you don't want to use the software, you can still use this manual speed control, and you just dial it up and it goes as low as 300 RPM all the way up to 2800, wow. Over here we have the power button. The M is mode adjustment, and this one is color mode adjustment, being the pattern of LED lights. And color switching, well, of course, switching the colors. And moving up on either side of the laptop, we have these little latches that go up and down, and that holds your laptop in place. And speaking of holding your laptop in place, and note that according to the manual, this is memory foam. And over on the side panel, we have a little bit of I/O. So this USB-C input right here, that is where you can connect to your laptop. And the bonus being that you have access to a little USB hub, which is always nice. Here's the power outlet. And on the back, we're treated to a nice little honeycomb design with the LED strip wrapped around it. And flipping it over to get a look underneath. On either end is a little foot that you can lift up like this and further like this. So you can actually create a good amount of airflow underneath this thing. And maybe that's something I should have done with my testing, because otherwise we only have the little rubber feet on the bottom of the unit to allow for an air gap for cool air. So maybe that's to assume that you get better temps if you use the feet on the bottom. Let's test that out. With The Last of Us Part 2, you can see that there is a 7-degree difference with the CPU, a 10-degree difference with the GPU, no difference with a CPU hotspot, and a 4-degree difference with the GPU hotspot. In Fortnite, we have only a 1-degree difference with the CPU temperature, 5-degree difference with the GPU temperature, 4-degree difference with the CPU hotspot, and 8-degree difference with the GPU hotspot. Handbrake video encoding shows a 10-degree difference with CPU temperatures, no difference with GPU, 1-degree difference with CPU hotspot, 6-degree difference with GPU hotspot. And on to the DaVinci Resolve video render test. 9-degree difference in CPU temps, no difference in GPU temps, 6-degree difference with CPU hotspot, and a 6-degree difference with GPU hotspot. So there's definitely a difference, and definitely worth experimenting with those feet. Alright, now back to checking out the underside of this unit. You can see here is the grill for the fan. There's 2 little latches right here, and right here we can lift up to take it off. Here's the dust filter. And just to note, you do get a replacement with the package. So this sums up my review of the Llano V12 Ultra Intelligent version. I would definitely recommend this laptop cooler. It looks nice. I like the RGB highlights. The software is very intuitive. And I'm a guy who doesn't like to use a lot of software while I'm using my computer. But due to the amount of technical information offered by the software, it makes a guy like me interested, because it gives insight to how my computer is running. So hit me up if you have any questions or comments. Otherwise, thanks a lot for checking out the video, and I hope you have a great day.